I was only 13 when my world fell apart. Most kids at that age worry about homework, making friends, or what game to play after school. But I worried about food. Not because of poverty, but because my parents, wealthy, well-dressed, and admired by society, chose to leave me hungry and alone. They didn't want me. Not really. To them, I was more of a burden than a blessing. My father was a businessman, always chasing money, while my mother was obsessed with appearances, parties, and the shallow approval of people who didn't matter. At home, I was invisible. At school, I wore the same torn shoes for years because buying me new ones wasn't a priority. The worst part? There was always food in the house. Expensive wine, imported cheese, pastries from bakeries that charged more for a slice of cake than some families spent on dinner. But I wasn't allowed to touch it. If I asked, my mother would sneer, "You've eaten enough. Don't grow up greedy." Greedy. That word haunted me. I wasn't greedy. I was starving. Some nights I went to bed clutching my stomach, trying to silence the growls with tears. When I turned 13, they started leaving me alone for days. They'd go on business trips or holidays, and I'd be locked in the house with barely any food left behind. I learned to ration slices of bread, to drink water when hunger felt unbearable, to trick my body into thinking I was full. I was a prisoner in my own home. The only person who ever cared was my uncle, my father's younger brother, Daniel. He was nothing like them. While my parents wore masks of perfection, Daniel was raw, honest, and full of warmth. He lived in a modest home compared to ours, but every time I visited, it felt like stepping into another world. He'd cook pancakes for me on Saturday mornings, listen when I spoke, and slip me little gifts, not expensive ones, but things that showed he paid attention. A notebook when he saw me scribbling stories on scrap paper. A warm scarf when winter came because he noticed I didn't have one. Family is supposed to take care of each other, he once told me as he tucked an extra pancake onto my plate. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. Those words kept me alive more than the food he gave me. But life wasn't fair. At 15, just as I thought maybe I could survive until adulthood with his quiet support, tragedy struck. Daniel died suddenly in a car accident. I remember standing at his funeral, numb, while my parents whispered to each other with an eagerness that felt out of place. It didn't take me long to understand why. Daniel had no children, no wife. He had money, maybe not on my father's scale, but enough to make greedy hearts beat faster. I overheard them talking to the lawyer after the ceremony. "He promised me he'd include us," my father said, already licking his lips at the thought of millions. "Of course he did," my mother replied with a smirk. "We were his only family." I wanted to scream. You weren't his family. You never even visited him unless you wanted something. I was his family. He loved me, but I stayed silent, because in my parents' world, children had no voices. Weeks passed, and the tension in the house grew. My parents grew restless, talking late into the night about what they'd do once they got the inheritance. Vacations, investments, a new house, a new car. Not once did they mention me. Finally, the day came when the lawyer summoned us for the reading of Daniel's will. We arrived at his office, my parents dressed in their best clothes, their smiles plastered on like masks. I sat quietly, my hands trembling in my lap. The lawyer, a man with kind eyes and silver hair, adjusted his glasses and began reading. As expected, Daniel had left behind a sizable estate. Money, property, and investments. My parents leaned forward, almost salivating. And then came the twist. The lawyer cleared his throat and said, "However, Mr. Daniel Williams included a clause in his will. He stated that his wealth should go only to the family member who truly understood love, care, and sacrifice. To determine this, he left specific instructions." My parents exchanged confused glances. The lawyer continued, "Mr. Williams wrote that during his life, he observed who treated him with respect and who did not. He left behind detailed letters explaining his choice." My father's smile faltered. My mother's fingers gripped her handbag too tightly. And then the lawyer looked directly at me. "Daniel Williams has left his entire estate to his nephew, Michael Williams. Silence. Heavy, deafening silence. Couldn't breathe. Me? He left it all to me? My parents erupted at once. This is absurd, my father shouted. He was a child. He didn't know what he wanted. There must be a mistake, my mother hissed. We're his blood family. The lawyer remained calm. Mr. Williams anticipated this reaction. That is why he included letters for each of you. Would you like me to read them aloud? My parents froze. Their pride wouldn't allow them to be embarrassed. They shook their heads angrily, muttering about challenging the will in court. But deep down, I knew the truth. Daniel had seen everything. He knew who loved him genuinely and who saw him as a wallet. That day, my life changed forever. But it was only the beginning because my parents were not going to accept being cut out so easily. And what they did next nearly destroyed everything. The silence in the lawyer's office that day turned into a storm at home. My parents didn't speak to me for hours after the reading of the will. But when they finally did, their words weren't filled with anger. They were dripping with sweetness that felt poisonous.
Michael, darling, my mother said, placing a hand on my shoulder. You know this is a big responsibility. You're far too young to manage such wealth. Don't you think it would be best if your father and I looked after it for you? I stared at her, my stomach twisting. For years, these people had starved me, ignored me, and treated me like an afterthought. And now suddenly I was, darling? My father chimed in, his voice smoother than I'd ever heard it. It's not that we want the money for ourselves. It's just, legal matters are complicated. You wouldn't understand. Let us handle everything, and you won't have to worry. But I did worry. Because deep down, I knew the moment I signed anything over, I'd be left with nothing. The lawyer must have known this too, because a week later he called me privately. Michael, he said, your uncle was very clear in his instructions. He didn't just leave you the inheritance, he left safeguards. Until you're of legal age, the estate will be managed by a trust one oversees. Your parents have no claim to it. Relief washed over me. Daniel had thought of everything. But my parents weren't done. They grew desperate, trying every trick in the book. One night my father cornered me in the kitchen, his face red with rage. Do you have any idea what you're doing? That money could change our lives. Our lives? I whispered. Or yours? He slapped the counter so hard I flinched. Ungrateful brat. After everything we've done for you. Done for me? I snapped, finally finding my voice. You left me hungry at 13. You left me alone for days. Uncle Daniel was the only one who cared, and he knew it. That's why he chose me, not you. The truth hit him like a knife. For once he had no words. My mother tried a different tactic. She cried, wailed about how unfair it was, about how Daniel must have been manipulated, about how I was turning against my own blood. But her tears didn't move me anymore. Eventually, they threatened to take the matter to court. And they did. For months, lawyers went back and forth. My parents argued that as guardians, they had the right to control my inheritance. They claimed Daniel wasn't in his right mind when he wrote the will. They even tried to paint me as an ungrateful child who didn't deserve anything. But then came the secret clause. During one hearing, the lawyer revealed it. Daniel had left behind a sealed letter, to be opened only if my parents contested the will. The judge allowed it to be read aloud. The lawyer unfolded the letter and began. To my brother and his wife, it said. If you are hearing this, it means you have chosen greed over dignity. I want it known that I saw how you treated your son, my nephew. I saw how you left him hungry, how you ignored him, how you stripped him of love. You had every chance to cherish him, and you chose not to. If you had shown even an ounce of compassion, perhaps I would have trusted you with something. But you didn't, so I leave you with nothing, not a cent, not a house, not even a memory worth keeping. Let this be your lesson: money follows love, not greed. The courtroom was silent. My parents' faces turned pale, their arrogance crumbling under the weight of Daniel's words. The judge ruled in favor of the will. The inheritance remained mine, locked safely in trust until I turned 18. My parents were barred from touching a penny. When we left the courthouse that day, my father didn't look at me. My mother muttered under her breath, "You'll regret this. You think you've won, but you've ruined us." But I didn't feel ruined. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. The years that followed were hard. Living under the same roof as people who despised me was like walking on broken glass every day. They cut me out of family events, barely spoke to me, and when they did, their words dripped with venom. But I endured it. Because I knew something they didn't: time was on my side. When I turned 18, the trust was officially transferred to me. The lawyer handed me the documents, his eyes kind. "Your uncle believed in you, Michael. Don't waste what he gave you, not just the money, but the chance to build a life filled with love." I promised him I wouldn't. I moved out that very week. My parents didn't stop me, they didn't even say goodbye. I bought a modest apartment, finished school, and used part of the inheritance to pay for college. I studied hard, driven by the memory of Daniel's faith in me. Years later, I built a career, not because of the money, but because of the determination his love instilled in me. I donated to charities that fed hungry children, remembering every night I went to bed with an empty stomach. As for my parents, their greed consumed them. They tried to start businesses, made reckless investments, and eventually lost almost everything. The very wealth they once worshipped slipped through their fingers like sand. The last time I saw them, they were older, tired, and bitter. My father refused to meet my eyes. My mother, however, whispered, "If we had treated you better, would things have been different?" I didn't answer. Some questions don't deserve answers. Because the truth was simple: my uncle's love gave me everything. Their greed left them with nothing. And that was the justice Daniel had planned all along.